All right, so let's start looking at surface area and volume. So first, we are given a solid and we are shown the front, top, and right-hand views of that. So when we build it with blocks, you can see how the front view here matches up with the blocks here, and the top view and the right view, and then in the top left corner, there's kind of a sideways view of the blocks. So if we looked at these blocks, one of the first things we might consider is the volume. When you look at volume, you're looking at how many 1 by 1 by 1 cubes fit into a solid. So all we would need to do for this is count up our cubes, and there are 6 of them in this rectangle here, plus these 4 in the L. So that's a total of 10 blocks. Since volume is giving you depth as well, so it's length times width times depth, that's 3 units or 3 dimensions. So we would say units cubed. Sorry about the clicking. So if we go on, we can now start looking at surface area. Surface area is what happens if you drop something in paint. It's what would get painted. You're counting up the faces. So if you think about dropping this in paint, looking at the front side, for instance, I could think all of those 7 sides would get painted. Now you can go ahead and count for this, but it's easy to count something twice or miss something. So another way to look at this is to look at the pictures that we are given first that are in gray and white. So I notice that the front one has 7, the top one has 5, and the right one has 6. But if I was to spin this around, the front and back would both have 7 faces. The top and bottom would both have 5 faces, and the left and right would both have 6 faces. So once I know those 3 values, all I have to do is double them and add them up, and that's my surface area. Since we're talking about area here, we're talking about flat things with 2 dimensions, that would be units squared. And again, that one was 10. So this last shape that we had is just a random solid. Oftentimes we'll get into solids with more patterns like this one. This is called a prism. Prisms have a base and a second base above it. They are parallel to each other. They don't intersect, and they are connected by lateral faces. So since the bases are the same, it's kind of like taking a layer of something and stacking it up. So you can see one layer here. We're going to use that layer to help us develop the volume and the surface area. So volume is, again, how many 1 by 1 by 1 cubes fit into a solid. In this case, there's 7 in that layer. Since there are 6 identical layers on top of each other, I'm just going to take 7 times 6, and I got 42 units cubed for my volume. If I want to go to surface area, I'm again going to start with that layer. But I notice that if I drop this into paint, the top would get painted, but the bottom of this layer wouldn't get painted because that is inside here. So I'm just going to look at one layer first. So those 7 would get painted. If I think about this top layer here, I also notice the sides would get painted because, again, the bottom's not getting painted. The bottom is internal to the tower. So if I count up those sides, I get 14. Now, if you want to pause and try to count it, this is a good exercise because sometimes it can be hard to see the back layers. So another way to think of counting the sides is the perimeter, because this side gets painted, this side gets painted, this side gets painted, and all the way around, it's going to end up being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. The number of the sides is going to match the perimeter. So now that we've got the 2 possible options we have for paint, we want to think about what this looks like for the whole tower, not just one layer. So the top is a base and the bottom is a base. So I'm going to have 2 of those base layers. Now I want to think about the sides. Those 14 sides are repeated for all 6 layers. So I multiply that by 6. When I add those up, I get 98 units squared. So in your notes, surface area again is the external faces of a solid. You want to think about units squared, and you want to think about dropping it in paint. So in this case, for our one layer, we've got a base of 4 and we've got a sides of 10. Again, you're thinking about perimeter. When I multiply the bases by 2 and the sides by 5, because there are 5 layers, I get 58 units squared. When I use the same example for volume, I'm again thinking about how many 1 by 1 by 1 cubes fit into the solid. Since we have 3 dimensions, it's units cubed. I'm thinking about filling it up, kind of like filling a cup with water. And when I look at this, I see there are 4 cubes in the first layer, Again, there are 5 layers, so that comes out to 20 units cubed.